Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. Last Sunday's elections were not merely a local ballot. It was a national litmus test for the major parties with some lessons to be drawn for elections to come. First and foremost, the 2017 presidential race. So a victory for the opposition, a serious setback for the ruling socialists, and a confirmation that the National Front is on the rise. With me to discuss the results of those elections and what it means for the future, Philippe Turle from Radio France Internationale and Jean-Marc Gonin with Le Figaro magazine. First, let's take a look at what happened on Sunday night in France.
Elation amongst supporters of France's right-wing UMP party. It emerged as the clear winner of Sunday's elections. Led by Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president says the result is a direct repercussion of the current president's failure to keep his promises.
It's the government's lies, its denial of facts, and its impotence that were punished by this vote.
Sunday's second round of local elections saw the ruling Socialist Party lose around half of its seats. The result doesn't necessarily come as a surprise. President François Hollande's ratings have recently plummeted to record lows after a short upswing in January.
Tonight, the Republican right won the departmental elections. There's no contesting it. The left, too scattered and divided in the first round, suffered a real blow, despite a positive track record. The large percentage of votes gathered by the far right presents a challenge for all citizens.
Stakes were high for the far-right National Front. Having won a quarter of the votes in the first round, Sunday's elections were an opportunity to take the measure of the party's growing popularity.
Today we make history, with the National Front establishing itself as a powerful political force in many territories. This exceptional turnout will be the foundation on which we build our future victories.
A bitter triumph for Marine Le Pen. The National Front failed to win a single departmental council, despite winning dozens of individual seats. But the historically high scores in the north and south of the country demonstrate their growing popularity.
Jean-Marc Gonin, a good night for Nicolas Sarkozy to begin with, and clearly a bad night for the ruling socialists.
Yes, for Nicolas Sarkozy, it was the first test, actually, since he's come back to the head of the party, to the helm of the party. And his party has done, obviously, very well.
Winning two-thirds of the department.
Yes, they switched places with the socialists. I mean, the socialists had two-thirds of the departments since until those elections, and now it's the contrary. The conservatives have got two-thirds of the department, and they have won them. So Nicolas Sarkozy is on the right track to not to change the name of the party. He has a kind of a very positive hand to do that, and he will be listened to. Although there are still very huge opposition inside, I mean, he can lean on those results, saying, "You see, I am a winning ticket." On the side of the socialists, it's a disaster, and the disaster is, I think, bigger than they feared, because the shadow of the unpopularity of the president, of the bad results of the national government, has been cast on the whole country. Although you had local people from the socialists who were in office and we were doing a pretty good job on a local basis, they have lost their seats because people wanted to give the blame to the central government, and they didn't even look at the candidates. They wanted to punish the socialists, and this is bad news.
What about the National Front, Philippe Turle? They were hoping, although they were quite cautious, to win one or two departments. This didn't happen. Nevertheless, they still garner between 23 and 25% of the vote. Clearly, the fact that it's a two-round system is not in their favor. So would you say that it's a disappointment, or clearly it's yet another stepping stone for the party?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest, and I think you won't find anybody within the National Front who will openly admit that they didn't do as well as they'd expected, although everybody knows that they didn't do as well as they wanted to do. They didn't win a single department. There were two departments that they were expected to win or could have won, one in the north of France and one in the south of France. They didn't manage to pull either of them off. There are two problems facing the National Front. The first one is that they were victim in the second round of forces from the left and the traditional right coming together to block them from winning a seat. And they haven't been able to counteract that to stop it from happening, and it also happened in the first round. And I think they would have probably done even better had they been able to prevent what was called a Republican gesture on the part of the socialists to vote in favour of the right-wing candidate if they were opposite a National Front candidate in the second round, where there were only two candidates. The right had said it didn't want to vote in favour of the socialist candidate in that case, but I think many people on the right did do that to stop the National Front from getting into office. So that's the first problem they've got.
So that's the glass ceiling that's still there.
But they did get 25%, and they had one councillor last time round. Now they've got over 60 this time round, so they have done incredibly well on that front. They didn't win any departments, they won a lot more councillors. The other problem that the National Front has is that it's only by itself. It's got no accords, links with other political parties. No one wants to strike up an alliance with it, so it's on its own, whereas the left and the right are both moving forward as groups, if you like, with several different parties coming together to help them win more seats. And that's something the National Front hasn't managed to overcome, and I think it's something that Marine Le Pen, the National Front leader, is going to have to address before the next regional elections in France later this year.
Right, because this is going to be the next test, and there the National Front has hopes maybe of winning 4 regions, because there the system is different. It's a proportional, it's a complex system, but there's a proportional part of it that could favor the National Front, because right now they're saying we have 25% of the votes, we only have 2 MPs, we have very few local representatives. This is unfair.
Yes, well, if you look at democracy and the representativity of a party, they should indeed have more a bigger share of the power, because they are a powerful party now, between 1/4 and 1/4 or a third of the electorate. Of course, as you mentioned, Mark, the system is extremely favorable. Next December, they might win over like 4 regions, which is a huge share of the political system in France. And regions have budget; they can really move things in the country, and they are expecting that. It's though difficult to predict, nevertheless, because the regions are being redesigned, regrouped, so there's not a very solid basis on how people will vote in next December.
Right, but obviously all the eyes are already on the 2017 presidential race, and many people are saying it's really a 3-horse race. Now you have 3 main parties, and as things stand today, Marine Le Pen is probably a shoe-in for the second round, and so the socialists will have to fight with the conservatives to be in the second round. And this is, let's call it, the way it is, a sea change in French politics, and those elections have confirmed that this is the way things work now in French politics.
Well, Marine Le Pen would like to see herself as the one who decides who wins. She would like to be the one who has the final say.
She would like to win,
She would like to win, obviously, but I don't think she stands much of a chance of doing that yet. But she would like to be in the second round of voting in the 2017 presidential elections. A lot depends on what happens between now and then, because you've got François Hollande, who's very unpopular, but he's hoping that there's going to be a lowering of the unemployment rate and a boost in economic growth, and that will suddenly boost support for him, and he'll be able to win a second term in office. But he needs to bring all his troops together. There's a split within his own ruling Socialist Party between those in favour of what he's doing and those who are criticising what he's doing. That's got to be sorted out. Nicolas Sarkozy on the right wing has got to federate his troops. A majority of French people don't really want Nicolas Sarkozy still to run for president, even if he's done very well in these elections. I think it was more of a rebuke for the socialists more than maybe great support for Nicolas Sarkozy. And the National Front has got to try to find a way of getting more support and maybe striking an alliance with another political movement in France to be able to shore up its support base, even if it's done incredibly well over the last 10 years, going from 5 to 10 to 15 and now to 25% support amongst the French people. If the economy suddenly changes, that also might change. It might change for the worse for Marine Le Pen. So a lot needs to be worked out and a lot still to play for between now and 2017.
But you agree, Jean-Marc, it's a three-horse race. Now, the National Front is not an accident of history. It's now part of the mainstream of French politics.
Yes, and if there's one candidate who is looking at the situation now, is sure to be in the second round, it is Marine Le Pen. And Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande will have difficulties to get there. The race will be between the two.
And you think that there is really going to be a fight to the death between them because they know the situation. They're never going to say, oh, one of us is going to be eliminated in the first round, but the way they're probably going to...
It's an odd triangle, because when you listen to Nicolas Sarkozy, he has to fight Marine Le Pen, and François Hollande might sponsor the National Front to weaken Nicolas Sarkozy on the right side of the display to just take over Nicolas Sarkozy. So it's going to be a very odd game that's going to happen in this country.
So it's a wide open race.
And Marine Le Pen, on the other hand, is using the two traditional parties, the UMP on one side and the Socialist Party, the PS, on the other, and criticising them as though they're just one party, calling them the UMPS. So they don't like that either. So everyone's fighting a battle to try to get into the second round. Everyone's fighting a battle to eliminate their rival, say they will win the next presidential election. But it's still a long way to go. We've got the regional elections coming up at the end of this year, and 2 years is a long time in politics. So if there's a miracle on the unemployment front, then maybe that will boost François Hollande's chances of running for another term in office, and that's certainly what he would like to do.
Okay, we'll have to see. Obviously, 2 more years to wait, but it will certainly be a very interesting time in French politics. Thank you for watching this edition of Face Off. We'll see you next week here on France 24.